Picture this. Your husband of 7 years sits you down, acts totally casual, and tells you he asked your younger sister to be his girlfriend, and she said yes. I stared at Colin like he'd just told me he changed our Netflix password, not that he was sleeping with Aubrey, the sister who'd been crashing on our couch for 3 months after her apartment flooded. He actually whipped out his laptop and opened a PowerPoint presentation titled Our New Family Dynamic with a photo of the 3 of us from last Christmas. He clicks to the next slide, completely straight-faced, pointing at bullet points about household efficiency and shared expenses. Right on cue, Aubrey walks in from the kitchen carrying a mug of coffee for him, but none for me. She sits right next to my husband on the couch, they lock hands right in front of my face, and she looks at me and says, "Hey sis, we need to talk about the new arrangement." But wait, it gets so much worse, because the psychological twistedness of what they did next will make your jaw drop. Colin clicks to another slide showing a weekly schedule, completely color-coded. Blue days for me, pink days for Aubrey. He literally says, "This way, everyone gets attention and no one feels neglected." I stood up, my legs shaking, and asked if he really just made a schedule for dating my sister. He just nodded, totally proud of his organization, and said Aubrey would be contributing 30% to household expenses now as an official partner, $. Aubrey sips coffee out of my mug, touches his knee, and says they've been feeling this connection for weeks. Weeks. It turned out this all started 6 weeks ago when I was away at a work conference in Dallas. They swore they didn't sleep together then, they just talked about feelings ethically. Ethically. Colin then pulls out a printed, 20-page document he found online called a polyamory agreement, already filled out with our names from 2 weeks prior. When I brought up our marriage vows, Colin just flipped to a statistics slide and said, 20% of couples try ethical non-monogamy, we're being progressive. Aubrey actually chimed in saying, in some cultures, sisters share husbands, it's totally natural. Then Colin drops the ultimate bomb. He wants to spend our entire $18,000 savings account, every single penny we had, to convert our garage into a second master suite for Aubrey. That is the exact moment I smiled for the first time. I looked at their smug faces and said, "You know what? You're absolutely right." They both looked shocked. So I pulled out my phone and said, "In fact, why don't we call Dad right now and tell him the good news?" Aubrey went pale as a ghost. She tried to grab my phone, screaming that we shouldn't involve parents yet, but Dad already answered on speaker. Now, you need to understand something crucial about my dad. He raised us both, and he knows exactly who Aubrey is. She used to be his favorite until she borrowed thousands of dollars from him 3 separate times and never paid a single dime back. So there we were, Dad on speaker, and Aubrey looking like she was about to throw up all over Colin's precious PowerPoint. Dad asks what's going on, and I say, "Dad, I have some exciting news. Aubrey has a new boyfriend, and you'll never guess who it is." Aubrey starts frantically waving her hands, stuttering that it's not what it sounds like. Colin, acting like he's presenting to a corporate client, steps up to the phone and says, "Mr. Fritz, this is Colin. We are just exploring modern relationship structures that many healthy couples adopt." The phone goes dead silent. 1 second, 2 seconds, 5 full seconds of pure silence. Then Dad's voice comes through, completely flat and ice cold. "Colin, are you sleeping with my younger daughter while you're married to my older daughter?" Colin starts stuttering, talking about emotional frameworks and clear expectations, while Aubrey breaks down into full-on, ugly crying, sobbing about how nobody ever wants her to be happy. She was pulling her classic victim routine. But Dad wasn't having it. He tells me, "Put the phone off speaker, just you." I walked into the dark kitchen, slammed the door, and Dad says, "Pack a bag. Pack enough for a few days and come straight to my house tonight. Don't argue, don't explain, just leave. I know a brutal divorce lawyer from my golf club, and we're going to need him." I hung up, walked straight upstairs past them whispering in the living room, threw my clothes into a suitcase, and told a panicked Colin that my lawyer would be in touch. But if you think that was the end of their twisted little game, you are dead wrong, because what happened the next morning at Dad's house turned their entire lives upside down. Saturday morning, Dad is sitting at the kitchen table with a fresh mug of coffee and his laptop open. He looks at me and confesses something that makes my stomach turn to ice. A month ago, Aubrey called him begging for $5,000, claiming her apartment flood insurance didn't cover the repairs. She was trying to secure cash while living in my guest room, eating my food, and plotting to take my husband. Dad felt something was off, so he didn't give it to her. Instead, he slides his phone across the table to me. "Read these," he says. It was a text chain between him and Aubrey going back months. 4 months ago, before any flood even happened, she was texting Dad complaining that I was controlling. Then 2 months ago, she texted him saying I was cold and distant with Colin, and wrote the exact words, "He deserves someone who actually pays attention to him." I think I could make him happier than she ever could. I looked at the dates and realized the terrifying truth. Aubrey texted Dad about my marriage failing exactly 1 week before her apartment conveniently flooded. The timing was too perfect. She didn't just use the flood, she planned this entire takeover from the very start. Right then, Dad's phone rings. It's my mother, calling from 2 states away. Dad puts her on speaker, and Mom drops an even bigger bombshell. She says Aubrey called her the previous week asking highly specific, bizarre questions about sisters in the Bible who married the same man, like Rachel and Leah. Aubrey was literally looking for religious justification to present this to me as a done deal. Mom was furious. She tells me she's booking the next flight out and says, "Don't go back to that house alone. Use that divorce lawyer Monday morning." But Aubrey knew she was losing ground, so she decided to play dirty. Friday night, a friend calls me shaking, telling me to check social media. Aubrey had posted a massive, 5-paragraph sob story with a picture of herself crying mascara tears. She wrote to the entire world that I was a toxic, jealous, controlling older sister who had kicked her out and made her homeless just because she unexpectedly fell in love. The comments were absolutely brutal. Hundreds of people were bashing me, calling me insecure, and saying love is love. Furious, I started typing a response to expose the PowerPoint and the contract, but Dad gently took the phone out of my hands. He looked at me and said, "Never fight a pig in mud. You both get dirty, and the pig likes it. Let me handle this." Dad dials Aubrey on speaker. She answers in her smallest, saddest victim voice, "Daddy, nobody is listening to my side." Dad cuts her off with pure steel in his voice, "Aubrey, you have until tomorrow morning to take that post down. If it's still up, I am sending screenshots of every single text you sent me to your mother, your aunts, your uncles, and your cousins. Let's see how sympathetic the family is when they read how you called your sister a boring doormat and planned to steal her husband for his house." The line went dead silent. By Saturday morning, the post was completely deleted. But the real climax happened that afternoon when Mom landed. She walked into Dad's house, dropped her bags, and said, "It's time for a family meeting. Text Colin and Aubrey. Tell them to be here at 3 o'clock. This is their one and only chance to make their case." I was terrified. Aubrey was a master manipulator, and Colin could make anything sound reasonable. At 2:45 p.m., they pull up. Aubrey struts in wearing a professional outfit, hair perfect, clutching a thick folder of scientific polyamory research from psychologists. Colin sets up his laptop on the coffee table, smiling his smug corporate smile, totally convinced he's about to win this meeting. Mom looks at them and says, "Aubrey, speak first." Aubrey stands up and delivers the performance of her life. She cries about how pure their love is, how I ignored Colin, how I didn't appreciate him, and how the heart wants what it wants. She places her articles on the table, begging the family to evolve their thinking. Colin is nodding, looking at me like I'm the problem. He looked at me and said, "Never fight a pig in mud. You both get dirty, and the pig likes it. Let me handle this." Dad dials Aubrey on speaker. She answers in her smallest, saddest victim voice, "Daddy, nobody is listening to my side." Dad cuts her off with pure steel in his voice, "Aubrey, you have until tomorrow morning to take that post down. If it's still up, I am sending screenshots of every single text you sent me to your mother, your aunts, your uncles, and your cousins. Let's see how sympathetic the family is when they read how you called your sister a boring doormat and planned to steal her husband for his house." The line went dead silent. By Saturday morning, the post was completely deleted. But the real climax happened that afternoon when Mom landed. She walked into Dad's house, dropped her bags, and said, "It's time for a family meeting. Text Colin and Aubrey. Tell them to be here at 3 o'clock. This is their one and only chance to make their case." I was terrified. Aubrey was a master manipulator, and Colin could make anything sound reasonable. At 2:45 p.m., they pull up. Aubrey struts in wearing a professional outfit, hair perfect, clutching a thick folder of scientific polyamory research from psychologists. Colin sets up his laptop on the coffee table, smiling his smug corporate smile, totally convinced he's about to win this meeting. Mom looks at them and says, "Aubrey, speak first." Aubrey stands up and delivers the performance of her life. She cries about how pure their love is, how I ignored Colin, how I didn't appreciate him, and how the heart wants what it wants. She places her articles on the table, begging the family to evolve their thinking. Colin is nodding, looking at me like I'm the problem. I stood up, feeling incredibly powerful. I looked at Colin and said, "The divorce papers will be ready Monday. Expect to hear from my lawyer." Then I turned to my snake of a sister and said, "You have exactly 48 hours to get your garbage out of my house. After that, it goes straight onto the lawn." Aubrey screamed about her rights, but Dad stepped in and said, "It's her house. You're a guest who is no longer welcome. Start packing." She looked around the room for anyone to save her, but Mom looked at her with pure disgust, Dad looked at her like a stranger, and Colin wouldn't even look in her direction. I grabbed my purse, looked at her one last time, and said, "I let you into my home when you needed help, and you tried to steal my entire life. 48 hours, Aubrey. Then I never want to see your face again." I walked out, got into my car, and looked through the window to see Aubrey screaming at my parents while Colin sat there looking entirely ruined. I smiled, pulled out of the driveway, and drove back to my house. And you know what? It's going to take time to heal, but I am going to be completely fine, because I finally know what real family loyalty looks like.